Dear Racer, back when LRH was sailing about on the Apollo, what were the big established land bases? Please talk about some exciting and interesting missions. Okay, so when Hubbard left St. Hill Manor in 1966-67 time period, he solicited volunteers to come with him to be part of the Sea Project, the SEA, the Sea is in the Ocean Project, and he went out and got some boats, and they started sailing around. And when you know the entire history of Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard, you know that he was basically going on the run. I mean, the Scientology had gotten a ban in the UK. There were, people were being stopped from even going into the UK to do Scientology. The tax exemption had been revoked in the United States in 1967, and I'm sure Hubbard got wind of that in 66, 67 when that was starting to go down. And so it wasn't looking like, the future was not looking real bright for Scientology at that particular moment in time. So he decided to go out and do the Sea Project, which within a year, turned into the Sea Organization. And one of the things the Sea Organization does is it sends out these projects, and they call them missions. They send a couple Sea Org members out. They brief them, they get them all jazzed up on what they're going to be doing, and then they go to a remote location, because Hubbard was operating on the ship, which was called the Apollo. And he had a little flotilla. He had some other ships, the Athena and some other ones. And they were sailing around in the Mediterranean and up and down the European coast. And they had various adventures and misadventures and whatnot. And there's lots of information about this time period. It went on for years on the internet. You can find people who were there telling their stories and talking about how things were on the ship and that sort of thing. There were no land bases at that time. That didn't happen until FLAG was established, and that was in the mid to late 70s. I think 76, 75, 76, I think, is when FLAG, they decided to take FLAG, the FLAG ship, which was the ship that Hubbard was on. They decided to take it to land, and they found a place in Florida, in Clearwater, and that's where they set up shop. And that was when there was, land base there. During the time that the Sea Org was being formed and was getting into operation is when the Sea Org bases started being formed up. So maybe what were the big established land bases? Well, there was the Advanced Organization, an American St. Hill, set up in Los Angeles in 1969. That's also around the time that they set up Celebrity Center, although that's not really considered a land base, but it's a Sea Org organization. It's manned up by Sea Org members. That's also the time period. I think that's when they set up. That's definitely when they set up in Copenhagen in Denmark, and they set up the Advanced Org and St. Hill organizations there. And I think that's when they set up in Australia, and I think that's in Sydney is where the Sea Org base is down there. Excuse me. So, and then of course there was FLAG and the one in LA, and I think those are the main bases. So that's when those were set up. As far as exciting and interesting missions, I'll tell you a couple things. I mean, one, there was Mission Into Time, which I think most people know about, who know much about Scientology, but it is where Hubbard was in the Mediterranean, and he decided that he was going to test out his whole track recall. In other words, his recall of things from past lives. And he was sure that he had been a prince back on back way thousands of years ago on the Mediterranean, and that he had buried caches of treasure, around, and he thought he was going to get these things dug up. So Sea Org members went out on his instructions as to where to dig, and they went out to dig up this buried treasure. And as far as I know, from all accounts that I've read and seen, they didn't find anything. And there's a whole book that was written called Mission Into Time, which talks about this whole misadventure and sort of, we found, exactly what the Commodore, that's what they referred to him as. Hubbard was the Commodore. We found what the Commodore, described in the tower and the pit and the this and the that. But what they didn't find was any gold or treasure. So so kind of a big failure. The other kinds of missions that are not talked about a lot, and in fact, I was told this story when I was in the Sea Org by another Sea Org member who was there. She said that they were sending missions out, these projects, and they were demanding that the orgs make money, right? And they would go out there with these intense demands to make money, like right now. And they actually brought, okay, now this is crazy, okay? But she's told me this was true. And I thought, what? Even when I was in the Sea Org, I thought this was insane. But she said they brought chains with them. And they would not symbolically, but actually chain the registrars, the salespeople, to their desks until they made their quotas. And these people would be there day and night. Now, I have never heard of this outside of this one Sea Org member in the Sea Org telling me that this used to happen. She told me they used to, she was telling me stories, internal Sea Org stories that were pretty wild. Guys, some captain of the advanced org who used to walk around carrying a gun. They're just crazy, crazy stuff. Guys used to be, she said she was regaling me with stories of the old days, like how crazy it used to be and how much better it is now. And this was, now being the time that I was in management and I was getting yelled at every day and we were having these intense conferences and getting pushed around. And it was bad. It was not fun at all. And she's telling me that it used to be so much worse, right? So I'm like, wow. So so I was aghast that people were being chained to their desks, right? And I even said to her, how could they go along with that? That's just insane. And she was like, well, when you're clearing the planet and and Scientology is the most important thing. And it's amazing to me that this conversation happened in the Sea Org, amongst Sea Org members. This isn't some ex telling me about this, right? Some ex Sea Org member. Anyway, that was a pretty wild story. And if any of you guys who are listening have corroboration of that, or know of just as crazy stories, I'd love to hear it. Put it in the comments section, or send me an email. I'd love to know about little secret stuff like that that's never really gotten out to the light of day yet. Just these things that happen to individuals that maybe weren't, there's no Hubbard policy anywhere that says chain the person to his desk. So you're not gonna dig up some Hubbard instruction somewhere to do that. And yet that happened, right? So maybe there's other stories out there like that. You guys let me know. But that's about as interesting and exciting of mission stories as I have to tell.